Welcome to CHCB TV. I'm your host, Nicole Waheed, and today we're going to continue our three-part series on breast cancer awareness, and our show is going to be focused on survival. We have four lovely ladies here in the studio to share their story with you and their journey with breast cancer. Now, joining us on a set right now is Miss Annie Fields and Miss Tamara Bishop. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We're going to share your story, and we really appreciate your courage in coming on and letting our viewers know what you've been through. It's really important that you express what you've been through and how you were diagnosed and how you're dealing with it now. So I'm going to start with you, Miss Annie. What was life like for you before you were diagnosed?
Well, I was busy having my children, and due to the course of my children, I was having a lot of milk in my breast. And they diagnosed me at that time in the early 50s, that it was milk cells there. But then I continued on to have my children. Then I took a biopsy like in the early 60s. And then when they did that, they found out that it was cancerous.
So you've been a survivor for many years. It sounds
yes,
like 40
I have.
plus?
Yes, over 40 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
For the first one, I had a radical mastectomy.
Wow.
And then I had a lumpectomy in 2000.
So before you were diagnosed, did you ever really pay attention to breast cancer?
No, I didn't. Matter of fact, even after I was diagnosed of it, I kept it very secretly. I did not expose myself, letting people know that I was a breast cancer survivor, until later on I became affiliated with the Witness Project, which is
at Roswell.
At Roswell. Okay. And then Sisters, I began to go out and speak, and I felt more comfortable of doing it then than I did prior.
Absolutely.
Because you never heard, too much about cancer.
Well, back in that time, breast cancer really wasn't discussed like it is now. A lot of times it was gone unaware. We didn't know exactly what it was, and the preventive measures weren't in place. Now, does your family have a history of breast cancer?
Not my immediate family. I have relatives, distant cousins, that they have been diagnosed with breast cancer.
I think it's really important you share with our viewers your treatment. How have you been treated with your breast cancer?
Well, at the time that I had the surgery, we stayed in the hospital much longer time then than we do now. I had, I guess they still do it, but they say climbing up the wall with with your arm to get that those muscles that you don't normally use back, so you could use your arm. And I started doing that about a day after I had the surgery. Then after I did that, I think I stayed in the hospital about 10 days. And then they had me to follow up with therapy. During that time when I had the surgery, I did not have chemotherapy or radiation treatments. I just had the therapy. Okay. So when I went for my first visit to have therapy, I did everything that the doctor wanted me to do. And so I didn't have to go back. And through the grace of God, I came through with it flying colors. I didn't have no problems.
That's beautiful. Now for you, Tamara, how has your journey been like for breast cancer?
Well, like you were talking about before, like prior to, believe it or not, I had a lot of friends. My friend of mine down the street that lived down the street from me had breast cancer. My godmother ended up with breast cancer. But even knowing that and going to the hospital and visit them, it never dawned on me that I would be in that same place. So in year 2000, I always get my mammogram, but I had some itching, and this was in between the mammograms. So I went to the dermatologist. And they determined they took a culture, and they said it was undetermined dermatitis. So he said to me, I think you ought to go to your GYN. So I did, and because I really didn't feel anything at the time other than the itching.
Now that's interesting, because I haven't heard that very often.
Yes, it's evidently, and I've heard other people say that too. Once you get to meet other people, they had itching as well. Okay. So then it's around the areola area.
Okay.
So then when I went to my GYN, he felt it, but initially I could not feel it. And he felt it, and then he says, well, I want you to do another mammogram, and went to the sonogram, and then he says, well, maybe, you know, he referred me to a doctor, but I had my preference to go to Roswell because that's where my friends had gone.
Absolutely.
So I went to Roswell, and the day I went, I went by myself, and I'm just thinking, well, they're going to go check me and give me an appointment to do a biopsy. They did the biopsy that day, which scared me to death.
Wow.
They did it that day, but they were very nice, and you know, and I think it was like a couple days later, they made an appointment for me to come back. Well, when I went back with my mother and my sister. Well, she's really my god sister, but I call her my sister. And if it wasn't for my family, I don't know what I would have done, because half the time I was at the doctor's, I didn't even know what they were talking about. It would go like in one ear and out the other.
Yeah,
because I was scared.
You're
and,
scared,
you know,
and the language is different too.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm a nurse, and you know, you understand, but
okay.
I just couldn't. I mean, just because I was a nurse, I wasn't getting it, you know. And so my sister went with me every time. She went with me for my chemo, because I had the chemo.
You had the chemo.
And I also had radiation.
Okay.
So it was like almost 10 months going through all of that.
So your family was very important through this ordeal.
Very important. And my sister would take off her job on the days I went to chemo. She was like my chemo partner.
Wow.
And my mom was up, but my mom wasn't, you know, really in the best of health.
Sure.
And I didn't want her always having to be around, because sometimes it would be all day with the chemo. So, like I said, my sister went, and then I did have a problem with one of the chemos, and ended up in isolation. I was there for 8 days, as a matter of fact. But
wow.
You know what? You learn, you pray, and you just come through it. You know, you do what you need to do, and that's what I did, you know.
Where'd you draw your strength from throughout this process?
First of all, from God. And in saying that, the time I was so scared, and my sister, we go to different churches, but actually she brought some people to my house. I didn't even know them at the time, and had prayer with me. And I'm telling you, I don't know, that just made me feel so good. It did me all the good in the world. And it was like, and I didn't even know them. Of course, now I've gotten to know them and have been friends. But I just thought that was so wonderful. And I thought it was wonderful once people found out that they would call me. Like, people from work would call me and say, I know, I've been there. I'm thinking, I don't remember when you were off. No, it's
so you didn't really notice any of that?
No, because some of them did not talk about it.
Right. Just like Miss Annie was saying that it was more, she's more secretive to herself.
Right.
Now, do you think that you pay attention to breast cancer awareness more so since
you've
been
definitely,
diagnosed?
definitely. I, you know, as much as possible, participate in the Sisters Network, and you know, especially, and see, in my case, I don't know of any family members that had breast cancer, but shortly after I had my surgery, my daughter had a lump, and it wasn't going away.
Wow.
So they you know, checked her, and it was okay. She was okay. But now she's allowed to have, the insurance will pay for her to have a mammogram, because she's only 26.
Wow, so young.
Yeah.
So you say that you do some work with Sister Network. Do you do a lot of outreach and talking to other women that have breast cancer, going through it, have had it?
Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, just yesterday, was I there? Yesterday we were out talking with people about breast cancer. And we were at one of the community centers.
Okay.
And so we were talking to the women there to tell them how important it is to get their mammograms. That is so important.